Although the Americans are sympathetic to the cause of Vietnamese nationalism, the post-war ideological chasm between the democracies of the West and the communism of the Soviet Union dooms Ho Chi Minh's revolutionary government to failure. The Viet Minh melt away into the countryside, and the situation rapidly deteriorates into what will be called the First Indochina War. General Giap.
On one side, the professional army of an old imperial power, armed with all kinds of modern weapons, aircrafts, warships, artillery, machine guns. On our side, we have just ordinary people, armed with simple weapons, but who are determined to fight to the bitter end to defend their country.
Although Giap's tactics gradually erode French control in the countryside, its weapons still possess frightening power. Ngo Ven Chu, a Viet Minh officer at the Battle of VinhIen, January 17th, 1951.
Our division has been under attack ever since this morning. We are forming a group of 10 elite battalions who should be able to take Vinh Yên before tomorrow. Then I hear a sound in the sky. Strange birds appear, getting bigger and bigger. Aeroplanes. I order my men to take cover from the machine guns and bombs, but the planes dive without firing. Then hell opens up before my eyes. Large egg-shaped canisters drop from the planes, and immense sheets of flame, extending for hundreds of meters, strike terror in the ranks of my soldiers. This is napalm, the fire that falls from the skies.
By 1951, 100,000 Vietnamese are fighting with French forces against the Viet Minh. March 1953, Saigon. Marshal of France Alphonse Juin and Commander of French forces in Indochina, Raoul Salan, greet US General Mark Clark, United Nations Supreme Commander in the Far East. Also present is Chief of Staff of the Vietnamese Army, Nguyen Van Hin. General Giap.
The French are now falling in with the Americans and using their money and equipment to establish national armies. And so, France is beginning to turn over Indochina to the United States.
The United States is funding 80% of the French war effort. The Viet Minh's resources are coming directly from the Soviet Union and Mao Zedong's new communist regime in China. The Indochina War is no longer a minor skirmish between a European empire and its reluctant colonial subjects. It is becoming a global battleground. In May 1953, the French replaced General Salan with General Henri Eugène Navarre. He immediately makes a momentous decision to to create a major defensive position in the northwest of Vietnam, close to the Laos border. He chooses a small settlement on the strategic route between China, Laos and Vietnam, occupied by the Thai tribesmen, who are still loyal to the French. It is called Dien Bien Phu. Navarre orders the airlift of a large force from the Gia Lam Air Base in Hanoi and Gat Ba in Haiphong. Viet Minh officer Ngo Van Chu watches as the French forces land.
We knew they were the best they had. Paratroopers, legionnaires. The battle would be hard. I realized that Dien Bien Phu would make or break us.
US-supplied B-26 bombers drop napalm on enemy positions. The French garrison below is outnumbered 4-1 by a Viet Minh army 50,000 strong, which completely encircles it. General Giap, late November 1953.
Our scouts at Dien Bien Phu send daily reports. The enemy is parachuting in soldiers, weapons, and a huge amount of barbed wire. They are industriously repairing the old Japanese airstrip. The French generals have announced, this is not a raid. We have taken this place, and we intend to stay. So be it.
Soviet director Roman Kármán is given total access to Giap's army to help him tell the story of the battle. The French have made a critical error, assuming that Dien Bien Phu is safe from attack by heavy armor and artillery. General Giap.
I ordered our 351st Engineering Artillery Division to toil day and night to widen the 82-kilometer trail to Dien Bien Phu for our motorized vehicles. Then they built a 15-kilometer track through the mountains so we could haul our artillery to the front by hand.
The French appoint Colonel Christian de Castries as commander of Dien Bien Phu. The battle that will be remembered by the veterans as 55 days of hell will soon begin. No quarter will be given, none will be asked for. Gao Xuan Nha, a Viet Minh officer.
It took us about 45 days. We marched at night and rested during the day. Sometimes we just slept on the roadside and dug our own foxholes against enemy attacks from the air.
Viet Minh Captain Chun Van Ho.
The French were physically bigger and had many weapons. But we had something we could use against them: our courage. We were determined to fight until the end, because they came here to steal our land.
March 13th, 1954. The assault on the French stronghold of Dien Bien Phu begins. General Giap.
The French could not resolve the threat to their airfield. Their porcupine defense had lost a vital element, its strength in the air. They could only reinforce their units with parachute drops, and they could not get their wounded out. Their camp had only 40 beds in its medical unit, and they had already hundreds of wounded. This was the French command's nightmare.
Amid gruesome scenes, reminiscent of the trench warfare and mass infantry attacks of the First World War, the death toll rises. There are countless acts of heroism on both sides as the Battle of Dien Bien Phu becomes part of military folklore. It also becomes a glorious victory for the Viet Minh and a shameful defeat for the French. French resistance ends on May 7th. Giap orders a full-scale infantry attack. De Castries radios Colonel Cogny at headquarters in Hanoi. The Viets are everywhere. The situation is very grave. I feel the end is approaching. General Giap.
Tonight, we will attack the Porcupine's Eye and finish it off.
Late in the afternoon, Giap hears the fateful news from his 312th Division.
All enemy soldiers in the command post have surrendered. We have arrested De Castries. Suddenly, everyone in the headquarters shouted, clapped their hands and hugged one another. They jumped for joy like children. Some people cried, others stood with their mouths gaping. The faces of others turned pale with shock.
French commander De Castries, who has been promoted to brigadier general during the battle, becomes a prisoner of war. He will be released after 4 months. One of the lucky ones. 1,500 men under his command are dead. Several thousand more are wounded. The Red Cross evacuates a fortunate few hundred of the Viet Minh's 10,000 prisoners. But most are force-marched to prisoner of war camps hundreds of kilometers away. Less than 4,000 will survive to be repatriated to France. Viet Minh casualties are 15,000 wounded and 8,000 dead. Victory at Dien Bien Phu creates a wave of euphoria across the country. Ngoc Anh Vu, a civil servant in the French administration.
At first, we couldn't believe it. The Europeans, so big and strong, with all their tanks and aeroplanes, beaten by us. Humble little Vietnamese. Farmers, school teachers, factory workers. We were so proud.
With the red flag of revolution flying proudly to mark the Viet Minh victory, the West's anxieties about the march of communism are reinforced, especially in the aftermath of the Korean War. General Giap.
The success of the revolution in China had created a balance of power between East and West. The war on the Korean peninsula was evidence of this new world situation. Until now, our war was still a battle between the peoples of Indochina and France. The United States was determined to replace France in Indochina, but the situation did not allow the US to jump directly into war. It might develop into a second Korean War, in which there was no guarantee of victory for the US. And it would not be easy for them to draw in allies already exhausted from Korea.
A compromise is reached at the Geneva Conference and signed on July 21st, 1954. A ceasefire is to take effect immediately. A temporary division of French and Viet Minh forces is to be created at the 17th parallel. Elections to unify Vietnam are to take place within 2 years. The independence of Laos and Cambodia is confirmed. After decades of colonial rule, the French leave Indochina. Both sides of the conflict in Vietnam are disappointed, but political pragmatism prevails. General Giap.
We needed a time of peace. We needed an area with a capital, a seaport and an airport to consolidate the fruits of our revolution and to prepare our forces to strive for complete independence and unity in the future.